I think that one of the biggest complaints that millennials, my generation, has is that we were given from our elders very specific directions as far as the roadmap for life and success. And a lot of us, mostly, with a little bit of rebellion, followed said directions, and they turned out to be bullshit. Basically, we were given the playbook for football, got out in the world, and it turns out everyone else was playing basketball, basically. Like, we're given the roadmap to life, and it was not the roadmap to life. And part of the reason is that the world changed, started changing very quickly between the, boomers to Gen X to millennials. And what worked didn't work anymore. And old people are notorious for not being open to having their mind changed or their eyes open. They're kind of stuck in their ways, so to speak. And part of the reason their advice was so bad is that it may have been good advice, but it just wasn't anymore. Part of it was that a lot of it was based on a lot of, mythical thinking that just wasn't true. Like, let's be real, it was bullshit. And, just some of it was just dumb luck. Like, back in their day, things flowed. The economy was strong, the dollar was strong, and it just isn't anymore. And that's just a result of the times in which we live. And we can blame the boomers all we want for wrecking everything, destroying the world, destroying nature, the economy. And, there's a point to be had there, but one can say that it was going to happen no matter who was in their shoes. Like, it was just, I think a lot of what happens is inevitable. And there's nothing we can do about it. It's just the times we live in are the times we live in. But I digress. What I originally got on the video to get my thoughts out about is that I'm very much into personal growth and personal development and self-improvement and all that kind of good stuff. Basically, trying to become the best version of myself. And I still read a lot of books about not only just how to improve myself, but how to deal with other people and get better in my dealings with that, about business, money, just anything that I can read that helps me to understand better the world in which I live and my place in it and myself. Trying to overcome those fallacies that were pounded into my head. And it's great. It's good stuff. But I think the one thing that is very easy to forget when you are on this path of self-development is that sometimes it just doesn't work. And I think I got that from one of my favorite books, which is The Art of Thinking Clearly. Cannot recommend that book enough. It is not an exciting book, and it is a little depressing because it points out exactly how flawed human thinking is and that there's really nothing we can do about it. but that, knowing is half the battle. So if we know our logic is flawed, then we can look out for it. And one of the ways in which it's flawed is that the people who get famous and write self-development books that are hits, and self-development YouTube channels and podcasts that are hits, it's because it worked for them. Keywords, for them. And what that book, what the point of that specific chapter in that book was that, okay, yes, they did A, B, and C and became a millionaire and wrote a successful book. Or they did A, B, and C and achieved nirvana and inner peace and became some sort of guru. Or they did A, B, and C and got, amazing relationships and friendships and out of it, and, or romantic success. Just the people who did maybe the exact same things and it didn't work for them aren't going to get a book written about it, because nobody wants to read a book about somebody that worked and strived and tried all these different things and still ended up failing, because it makes us very, very nervous that the same thing is going to happen to us. However, what I'm saying is that for every self-help success story, there are probably 1,000 self-help failure stories, and we don't want to listen to them, and we don't want to hear them, and we don't want to think about them, because let's be real, the odds are a lot better that we fall into that category than we fall into the success of YouTube sensation category. And I'm saying that all to say that the video that I'm going to make today, or the topic that I want to talk about today, is basically my education career, my college story. And I mean, no one's going to write a book about it, least of all me, because I don't like thinking about it that much. But I'm using my college story to emphasize, not prove, because, this is just personal story, doesn't prove shit, but I'm using it to emphasize how you can do all the right things, you can bust your ass, and if the cards don't go your way, they just don't go your way. And I think it's a lot more about who you know and the circles that you run in and where you come from, and maybe just luck, or I don't believe in luck, but chaos, chance, than anything else that determines the relative success or failure of each individual. And I say relative success and failure because a lot of people can look at my life and consider me a success. Some others can look at it and consider me a failure. Me, a little bit of both, but I am content. So, yeah, I am going to use the story of my educational career as a lesson, so to speak, in that doing all the right things, taking all the right roads, making all the right decisions, well, more or less, sometimes it just doesn't matter. Sometimes the cars just don't go your way. And that's what all the self-help books will not tell you. They say, you do this, you do that, and if you're not a millionaire by the time you're 30, you didn't do it right. I say no. I say you can do all the right things and say all the right things, and still things don't work out. maybe because you're just not the right person, or don't know the right people, or, you know, maybe I'm just not that great of a person. Not, you know, like, it just, sometimes shit just doesn't work out. So yeah, my educational career sounds like it should be this awesome success story, because I was a homeschool kid, didn't make it through homeschool, so to speak. I was too much of a handful. Got sent to a Catholic boarding school, got kicked out of said boarding school, so I finished half of my junior year. Then went and got my GED, and then joined the Army. And one of my main reasons for joining the military, for the Army, was the college afterwards, because, you know, that's one of the main selling points. And yeah, I'm like, cool, because, you know, that's obviously, you know, no high school diploma and not doing so hot. That was probably going to be my only path to college, so I took it. And I'm not going to go into the military details, but let's just say it fucking sucked, and got deployed twice and got stop lost, and it was just the worst. I'm not really that depressed or suicidal of a person, but the military, I was more depressed and suicidal than any other point in my life. Just, it is what it is. It fucking sucks. It blows. It's the worst. You know, you're over there doing evil shit for the evil empire and risking your life in the process, and people around you, friends, dying, and for the evil empire, and you're just like, this fucking sucks. But anyway, did it, got out, GI Bill, here we come. Excited, to say the least. You know, I'd done 5.5 years of the fucking military, and finally was out, finally was going to start college, finally was going to be a success, finally was going to get my life pointing in the direction that I wanted it to go. So yeah, here I am, out of the military, excited, got the GI Bill, ready to kick some ass, because one of the things that, you know, our generation, the millennials, got told by our wise eye roll elders, our idiot elders, is the importance of college and going to college, and you can't, you know, put a price on education. And you know, that, I think, was one of those things that was good advice for them, but the world was changing quickly, the economy was changing quickly, and I think people know it now that college is a scam, but maybe back in their day it wasn't, maybe. But yeah, that was the thing, is you had to go to college if you wanted to get a career, a job. You know, if you didn't want to be digging ditches the rest of your life, you had to go to college, right? That's what we all got told. Turns out digging ditches pays fucking way better than anything well, not anything, but better than at least the career or the degree I got. So, but anyway, I digress. So here I am, starting out, fresh out of the military, got my GI Bill, and I started in community college because I wasn't quite sure what degree I wanted to get. I just knew that everyone said it was so important that you go to college and get a degree. So I was going to do it. And started out just taking my gen eds at community college. And I enjoyed it. I took it very seriously. I studied. I read every chapter of every book. I actually, there were a couple classes where my final grade was over 100%, because I not only got 100% on everything, the tests and the homework and all that, I also did extra credit. I was that serious about it. Like, and this is a kid who has a GED who never graduated high school. And I am kicking ass in community college after getting out of the military. And that's why I say this sounds like the entire time it's going to sound like a success story, because, I mean, that sounds awesome, right? You know, kid with a GED and a troubled past, getting out of the military after a rough time in the military, and is kicking ass in community college, but college. And it was nice, you know, I had got a little house out in the middle of nowhere and was commuting about half an hour. Not a big deal though. And I still wasn't quite sure what I wanted to go to college for. But yeah, I was doing it. I was doing the thing. I was doing awesome. I was also working in a garage. After going to school during the day, I would go to the garage in the evenings, and I was their cleanup guy. So I'd go clean up all the oil spills and just clean everything up, empty the trash. That's what I would do after I got off of school. On the weekends, I was also working at the Humane Society, which I love dogs, always have, and it would keep me in shape too, because I would actually take the dogs on runs. So the dogs loved me because I was the guy who would take them on runs. And yeah, so I was going to school, community college, full-time, both semesters, working 2 part-time jobs, and then during the summers, I was working at a cabinet factory in town, and working full-time during the summers at this cabinet factory. And I had a girlfriend, and she worked in an elementary school, and I went there a couple times in my uniform to, you know, the kids loved it. They'd be like, oh, soldier, and they loved it. I would read to them and read books with them, and I loved it too. Like, it was great. I enjoyed working with kids. It was meaningful, and that's when I thought, hey, you know what I should do? I should be a teacher. So the story continues, and I decided to be a teacher, elementary school teacher. At first I was going to do history teacher, but I think the thought of high school kids just scared me, because I looked like a high school kid back then, and I was like, yeah, there's no way ain't nobody going to listen to me in high school. So, and plus, I was having fun working with the elementary school kids in, the classrooms that I had visited. Good experiences there. Loved reading with them and stuff. So, yeah, I figured, make the world a better place, make a difference, help the youth of tomorrow, just all those stupid dreams. But anyway, enrolled at K-State because I wanted to go to quote-unquote real college, and I wanted to, the football games and the parties and all that, the college experience. And I actually ended up taking college, once again, very, very seriously. I did not party. I did not go to the bars, very much. I think the days that I went to the bars, I usually was busking, trying to make some dollars out there, and not actually being in the bars. Now, I drank way too much at home by myself, but that's beside the point. I was taking college very, very seriously, and the entire time, I think I only got 1 B, and that's a crazy story in itself. But yeah, other than that, it was straight A's. I think I graduated with 3.98, summa cum laude. Granted, elementary education is not a difficult field of study in college. But, I mean, I tried really hard. Like, I read every book, sometimes more than once, did all the homework, studied for every test, did all the assignments, just tried really, 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 really hard. And for all intents and purposes, I was a very, very successful student. Now, turns out that getting good grades doesn't mean jack shit, but nobody told me that. I was just focused on getting those good grades. And I had a couple of friends, but more or less I would just stick to myself. The couple of friends I had, I would study with mostly. These weren't like party friends or, anything like that. I had a couple study buddies, basically. And a couple of friends that I would study with, and a couple of friends that they would let me crash on their couches. And so I lived a little distance away, like 45 minutes to an hour, depending on traffic, from school. And I had this house more or less because of a failed relationship. But anyway, I had this house and was living in it. And my mind's all over the place. So I had this house 45 minutes to an hour away. I was still working part-time jobs while I was going to school. So I was delivering pizzas now on the weekends and evenings. And I was also still doing the Humane Society with the dogs. So yes, I was very much working my way through college and working very hard. And during the summers, I was still doing that full-time cabinet factory job and doing the other part-time jobs. So a lot of summers while I was going to school, I would work 2 part-time jobs and a full-time job. So I remember there was one time when I think I worked almost the entire summer. I didn't have a day off. So I was going hard. Like I said, I was trying really, really, really hard. I was getting the GI Bill. I was getting straight A's. I was going to be a teacher and make a difference and change the world. I was not partying. I was studying with people. I was keeping to myself. I was taking those grades very seriously. I was, basically being a model student. Fat lot of good it did me. Oh yeah, the other thing. So I was pretty hardcore. A lot of nights, I would go to class and sleep in my car and then wake up in the morning and go to class or crash on somebody's couch or I was hardcore. Like, if this was a rags to riches story, it'd be a good one. Unfortunately, it's not. It's just a rags to rags, but it is what it is. So anyway, my rags to riches college success story. Troubled kid, not a high school graduate, got a GED, went to the military, got my GI Bill, did awesome in community college, straight A's in community college, went to big old K-State, studied hard, stayed away from all the parties and the women. 3.98, summa cum laude, just killing it, so to speak. Sleeping in my car, working part-time jobs, working full-time jobs, no days off. And doing it. Success story. Or one would hope. Now, let me digress about that one B that I got. So, It was in classroom management, which ironically ended up being my downfall when I actually tried to go out and teach in the real world. Maybe it should have been a premonition, but I mean, that was, I think that was right before I did student teaching. So I was a senior, basically. And it was basically a take-home final. And I was living in kind of a bad area in Topeka, and my roommate at the time, well, I've had a few roommates that were felons, but he's a buddy of mine. He's a good guy, but he was hanging out with a rough crowd, let's just say. And I did one of those things where I went to school, I stayed overnight at school, I went to class the next day, and then drove to the cabinet factory. I think I slept in my car again, and then was going to go to work in the morning. And basically he called and said that he had gotten robbed, and someone had stolen my laptop. And yeah, he had some guys were over that probably wouldn't have wanted in my apartment had I been there, but I was not. I was sleeping in my fucking car trying to be a good student, and they stole my laptop. And that had that written final that I had done but not submitted. And I was like, shit, because when I got back from working that day, I had to go submit look over that final paper and submit it. And laptop was stolen. I didn't have it saved in the cloud. It was gone. Gone. And that's what I get for living in the hood, I guess. But, one has to survive. And yeah, so I got back and I got on a library computer and emailed my teacher, hey, my laptop got stolen. Can you send me the test questions again, for this written final, and let me submit it. And it was basically like crunch time. Like, I had to do it that day. It was not a good situation. And I didn't have the course materials anymore because that was also on my laptop, I think. I forget the exact scenario, but somehow I had to repeat my final really fast on a library computer from memory. And needless to say, I did really, really shitty. And the teacher wrote me back saying that she should have actually failed me, but I had gotten straight A's and everything else, and that was the first thing that I had ever done bad on. And basically she said that she didn't believe my story, that she thought I was just making it up. Because granted, it's a pretty crazy story. Like me sleeping in my car, some drug dealers in my apartment while I was gone, stealing my laptop, beating up my roommate, running away with my laptop that had my final on it. She was like, yeah, and the dog ate your homework. Sure, buddy. And I've had a lot of experiences like that where crazy shit happens and the authority figures don't believe me because they're like, yeah, that doesn't happen. And I'm like, yeah, it does, motherfucker. But yeah, that shit happened. That's what happened. Drug dealers stole my laptop, beat up my roommate, made off with my final that I had so laboriously worked on, and then I had to try to recreate it from memory on a library computer. And she thought I was bullshitting. Whatever, people can think what they want. But I did very badly on it, but she mercifully gave me a B, and that was the only B that I got in my entire college career. So yeah, so far, and then I graduated, right? Summa cum laude, walked the stage, got my degree. I was going to be a teacher. I was going to go save the world. With my degree fresh in hand, First thing I did was I was going to go and teach overseas in South Korea. And while I was waiting for all that paperwork to go through, I did some substitute teaching in Topeka. And it was a mixed experience. Some days were good, some days were definitely not good. And, you know, that's typical substitute teacher life anyway. And then I did my year in Korea, which was pretty awesome. I mean, ups and downs, as with anything else, but a very good experience. Very glad I did that. Then I came back to Topeka and was going to substitute teach again, but I got hired on full-time at the last minute at a school that nobody else wanted to teach at. And I had been there before, and I had subbed there before, so I knew what I was getting into. And maybe should have said no, but whatever. Should have is not a word that I like to include in my vocabulary. So let's just say that year was, not going to say it was as bad as the military, because nothing is as bad as the military, but pretty damn close. At the end of every day, I would sit in my car just crushed, listening to Deliver Me by Parkway Drive, just fuming and angry. And yeah, it was just, every day was bad. There weren't any good days. I was a terrible classroom manager. This was back, it was a hood school, and I was a white guy, and all the students called me Donald Trump. And it was just, I mean, it was just really bad year. And at the end of it, I did not get my contract renewed, and I applied to teach at one other place, kind of half-heartedly, and yeah, just didn't go back. I went to work for the Parks Department. Outside, in nature, no more kids, no more classrooms, no more unhelpful administration. Yeah, just called it quits. Like, that was it. That year, terrible. And I could have pushed through. I could have tried another school. Once again, that's not something I do not second guess that decision to not go back to teaching. That's how bad of a year it was. I was honestly just really bad at teaching. The teaching part I did, like, I could teach a lesson, but I could not manage a classroom. Like, I'm kind of shy, quiet, and yeah, the kids ran amok, walked all over me. It was just a really, really bad situation, bad year, bad choice of career. Just, yeah, just done. I was done. The school was done with me. The kids are done with me. I was done with them. I was done with the school, and I was done with the career as a whole. And yeah, all those years of going to school and the military and the GI Bill and sleeping in my car and working my way through college, and I'm not going to say it was all for nothing, because nothing is all for nothing, but God damn it. Just God damn it.